Hi there. Today I'm going to be tying Lance Egan's Iron Lotus, and I'm going to be doing that on Maxcatch's CVS vise. It's a nice travel vise, nice entry beginner level vise. Good strong hook holding. I like the cam lever. If you set it up, it allows you to rotate, which I like that. It's not a true rotary vise, but it does allow you while holding the hook. I'm going to start with a few wraps of 0.20 lead. And that does a couple of things. One, it allows me to start the taper on this body. It's a very slim profile. And the other thing is it does secure the bead towards the front of the hook. This hook I'm using is a black nickel jig barbless hook from Fly Tying Source, Andy Brown. And the bead is also his. It's a 3.5 natural or black tungsten bead. And great guy. Shout out to Andy. So I'm going to start with a UTC light olive thread, and I'm using Maxcatch's 4-inch bobbin. It's got the ceramic tips, which is nice for easy flow of thread when you're feeding the thread through. The extra length I like on some longer flies because it gives me that reach I need. Cut that off. Get that out of there, and then I'm going to be starting just getting a few wraps on this before I do my tailing fiber, which is going to be a Coq de Leon. It's actually a really nice tailing fiber. The medium speckled has some awesome color to it, and this is a hardy feather. It lasts for a very long time if you're lucky enough to have your flies last. I don't always get that luck. Between trees and rocks, not so much fish, but that's just the level of my skill. So what I'm doing is I'm measuring these tail fibers, the length of the body, and then I'm going to tie them in all the way to the start of the bend in the back, and then I'm going to come back up front and just clip off the excess of those feathers. Next is a UTC white in a small. This is proportionate to the size hook or fly you're tying, is what size wire you're going to use. I like to keep these on an extra spare bobbin. Some of the cheaper bobbins that don't necessarily have the ceramic tips, it manages the thread, the wire. If you've ever had one of these in your hand and you're wrapping around the hook and you drop the spool and the thing explodes on you and you got wire like that, you understand why I like to keep them on this. This is a good wire spool tender. It's really cheap, and it comes in handy for just cutting off what I need. So I'm going to tie this wire in. I'm going to do it on the front of the hook, and the reason I start on the front of the hook is towards the tail section is I like to tie my wire in opposite of the direction that my thread is tied in, and I do that for two reasons. One is anytime that you're going to be tying in material, say like a woolly booger or anything like that, where your hackle, you're trying to protect that hackle from the fish, from teeth, you're going to be wrapping that wire opposite the direction of the material to secure it. So if one does get broken, your whole bug doesn't come unraveled. So I always tie my wire towards me over the top of the hook, and then I don't have to remember which way to do that. So as you can see, I'm getting my taper where I want it. This is a very slow or slim profile on the bug, and I think that's really about what I'm looking for there. It's a nice, smooth, narrow taper. I'm going to bring that to the front. We'll finish this off just to secure the thread so I don't have a mishap. I'm sure we've all done that. And then taking the wire, I'm going to, like I had just described, wrap towards me over the top with this ribbing. The white really contrasts with the rest of this body, and I'll do a couple wraps over the front, over the top, to secure that with keeping tension on the thread. I'm going to grab the wire and then spin it, helicopter, to break that off, get that out of the way. So with that done, I'm ready for the wing case, and today I'm using Fly Tyer's Dungeon, the Mad Scientist, his baby bug back in black. Lots and lots of colors with this stuff. It's easy to work with. A couple of things you can do, make everybody's into modification. You can add legs to this with soft tackle. You can add silicone legs, which Maxcatch has some awesome silicone legs. I love using this stuff. It's really hardy, and it has some color that lasts. So while I'm securing this, I'm going to make sure it's centered on the back where I want it, and just kind of tug that back a little bit, get it tucked behind the bead, get that right where I want it. And now I'm ready for some dubbing. And today I'm going to be using, once again, Flat Tire's Dungeon UVX Rainbow Olive. This stuff is incredible. The sheen that it has and the ease of wrapping it, getting that noodle going. And the Flat Tire's Dungeon has some incredible material that I do like to work with. So what I like to use is wax before I do dubbing. It makes it a little easier on the application, and it just makes the bug a little hardier. So I'm going to just apply a little bit of wax on this thread where I'm going to get my needle going. And then less is more in dubbing. If you, like I, had to struggle when you learn how to do dubbing, you're always trying to apply a wheelbarrow on a piece of thread, and it doesn't really come out that well. So it really helps when you're working that dubbing noodle to apply less, like a wisp. Just picture yourself blowing that dubbing across the thread and hoping it sticks, and you probably have too much. So I'm going to start wrapping that thorax, and I don't want a huge thorax on this because the whole bug itself has a pretty slim profile. That looks really good to me. So I'm going to pull my wing case forward, and then swapping hands, I'm going to make sure with the capture wrap that I have that where I want it. I'm not sliding off to the side. And I'll do another wrap over the top and one in the front just to secure it. You can use scissors. I prefer a razor blade when I'm cutting this stuff. I put a little bit of tension on it and just barely touch that razor blade to it, and it gets a nice tight cut. So I'm going to be doing a whip finish on this just to secure the thread, because what I'm going to be going out over the top of this is with a UTC red collar that gives us a little bit of a hot spot and a nice contrast. This hook dubbing loop from Maxcatch is awesome because to me it's just easier for me to handle with like what I just did and closing that knot. This is just a lot easier to use. So I really have, this has become my go-to as far as a bodkin. I don't use this for glue applications or anything like that. I do use it for picking dubbing and then trying to finish off my knots. So the hot spot collar is going to be a UTC red 70, and this is going to be subtle. It's not going to be a huge, thick. I don't want it to stand out. It's just got to be that little bit of something that the fish key in on, and it's noticeable. I do like to spin my thread. This time I'm doing it the opposite direction as opposed to when I'm trying to capture a material. And the reason I like to spin it is to keep a nice tight, corded up thread, which keeps my collar even tighter. So I look at that, and that's pretty much where I want that. I could do a couple more wraps, but I think I want that subtleness. And then to finish this off, I'm going to make sure that the dubbing's brushed down a little bit so I don't get that caught in it. And I'm going to be using some UV resin, thin, two purposes. One is to protect the wire because the fish do have teeth, and the other is to build up that wing case, and it gives it some depth, and that red actually shines through a little bit. So I'm going to make sure I got an application where I want it, and I do, and take a UV light and hit that. This is a UV Infinity light by Loon. It's incredible as far as the lasting of the charge. With my battery lights, which I've got several of, I've got somebody next to me handing me batteries when I'm trying to use it because they just go through them so quick. This charge is 3 months old and I use this every day. So that speaks volume to this product. I'm going to pick this out just a little bit because again, it's a very slim profile. The picking, what this is doing, we're looking for the color and we're looking for motion, because fish like to key in on color, profile, and motion. And this is going to mimic nymph's legs and gills even on some of these bugs. So I kind of brush that out a little bit, and I think that's pretty much where I want that to be. So again, this is Maxcatch CVS Vice. I do like this. It's compact. I do bring it with me when I'm fishing. If I see something that the fish are keying in on that I don't have in my box, I do bring stuff with me. I keep in my truck just a travel bag, and I'll go up to my tailgate and I'll take 5 minutes off the water and I'll wrap up something to try to mimic what I'm seeing. And this really works well for that. I've got a little setup for me to do that. Lance Egan's Iron Lotus. I suggest you learn how to tie this and you fish with it because it's really productive. Tight lines, stable rocks, and full nets, my friends.
No.
Today I'm going to be tying Lance Egan's shit. The mower's messing my head up.